We have a special guest today.
But we only have him for 20 minutes? 30 minutes?
Yeah, he can't stay very long.
Yeah.
Just a little
bit. Yeah, no, this is Vegeta.
It's the ring.
He's got the earrings, but the power level's too high. It breaks the earrings. So it happens every time. In the middle of the fight, unfuse.
It also...
In which case, we'll have two guests.
We'll have two guests. Two surprise guests. Potentially. Midway through episode. What's up, you guys? Welcome to the Outrun Show. Today, because we are also a gym, we have summer camps. We are on special locale, which is my office at home, and that means we have some special guests that are toys. So if you guys like toys, and you still don't know what a Dragon Ball character looks like, then you should probably check out the YouTube channel and get a visual for the context here, because I'm sure that's going to play in to this session today.
You'll miss a lot of inside jokes if you're not in the know. So
inside jokes
and reference.
Because we're inside. All right.
That one you only need to be a dad.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly. So do you guys think dad jokes like just happen as you get older, like your humor worsens, or is it? I make
dad jokes and I'm not even a dad. So.
There you go. So it might just be
you're just making jokes that you want to laugh at.
That's the thing. It shifts from making jokes to make others laugh, and you're just like, I just want to make myself happy, so I'm going to say this joke because I wish somebody else would say it for me.
That is awesome.
That's the essence of a dad joke.
Okay, on this episode, the power of dad jokes and why everyone, even if you're not a dad, can tell them, and then power training. Is there really anything else other than power training? And what does training even really look like for a parkour athlete?
Mm-hmm. Well, let's break in, and we'll start with, I think last time we cycled back to this, we were talking about us being students. Are you guys still doing your same training programs? And if you are, what are they?
Nope, I actually jumped to basketball training. I was supposed to do soccer, right?
Yeah.
You were supposed to do soccer.
Yeah.
So background, last episode we talked about stealing from other sports, their training methods, and then bringing them into parkour and benefiting from them. And we had a little side bet that we were going to do something like Jesse was going to take football, American football. I was going to take basketball. Justin was going to take soccer. And then Justin immediately left and then went and stole basketball.
But it was on my top 3 sports to steal from.
It's true.
Basketball.
And you weren't like, no, nothing for basketball. That's something I can take. And then you went around and about face stole for basketball. You did claim that there was some gold there. So
I actually didn't know the program was for basketball. I just was going through it, and he just kept saying basketball over and over again.
Who's doing your program?
It's PJF.
Is that the Berkco guys? Yeah. So they're really solid Facebook advertising because they obviously are selling because they have a retargeting budget for sure. But and that doesn't mean you're not quite endorsing that program yet. This is just research you're doing.
Yeah. Yep.
Just checking out. So we do that.
We'll see if they can make me a 40-inch vert.
Yeah.
What's your vert now?
I think it's 24. I think it's right at 2 feet.
Okay.
So lots of improvement to go.
Yeah.
That's huge margins, bro.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah. It's almost double where it's the hardest. All right, cool. I was already on some programming. I've been checking out a couple different programs. Most recently, I like some knee prep stuff that I'm doing, and that's the Knee Over Toes guys. I've done some research from them, and I've also looked at a couple other folks who have similar programming as far as not emphasis on knees, but emphasis on longevity and training. And I've also looked at, I think it's Mindful Mover is another guy that I've been just kind of watching. And I've seen a lot of stuff, a long time ago when we did Ito's stuff, we started to see people really in a more appealing way talk about generalist movement and sort of like what are the things. And I've definitely been caught in the circle of being super interested in parkour or whatever sport, if that was martial arts, and then going into like sort of more generalist training, and then getting stuck in that. And really a barrier that I'd like to talk about today and address and get some ideas and feedback from you guys is how to marry the two. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes I feel like I'm in preparation for training, and sometimes I feel like I'm only training, and finding that balance of getting the right amount of sort of generalist movement and prep in. We would potentially call that maintenance, although I don't ever think that you can just maintain. You're either going one way or the other, right?
Yeah.
And then, and what's the right amount of that, and how much do we really need? And really, or just straight up, like you were saying, you were talking about power too. Like, is any of this other stuff really even necessary for what we do?
Yeah, I think it.
And then what's the alley of programming that you're looking at right now?
Yeah, I guess I'll answer that. Right now, I am actually doing, my programming is from a former NFL player. John Wilburn is my current coach right now, doing my stuff. So I am, and I was actually doing that before we had made that decision. So it kind of just
same here. I was doing
right in that alley
the
of
KOT stuff before.
But I've been learning a lot from his programming, and I've been asking a lot of questions and getting a lot of information. Definitely most of his stuff is going to be more strength oriented than it is power. But I've always felt like, since parkour has been my only sport since I was, in middle school when I started, power was the only thing I've ever trained, either by ignorance or by intention. And so, now in like the past 3 to 5 years, getting into strength training has been really great for me. More specifically, strength training, not just supplemental strength training, has been really awesome for me and really enjoyable. And it's definitely been an area that I felt like I was missing. It's like a lot of parkour athletes, we always do our pull-ups and our climbing stuff with, our palms out, right? So a pronated position when we're climbing. And then we find that we end up having like some weaknesses when it comes to pulling strength this way.
Which usually is where people are stronger.
Yeah, which
right. So you turn the hand inward to what people would call a chin up traditionally, if you're going to differentiate the two that way. But yeah, it does seem...
So it's like very similar like that, and that, like, if you're always training power, but then you miss out on the strength training, there are definitely some weaknesses there that you just end up not knowing you have until you go, and you're like, oh, I'm super powerful, but when it comes to doing work, I can't, right? Like, I can jump super far, but I can't do work.
Right. And what do you mean by work?
By work, I mean, like, mom's like, hey, honey, can you help move these, like, 2 tons of rocks that we have? And, like, you, like, get 3 shovels in, and you're like,
winded.
Well, you're just not just winded, but you're just fatigued, right? Like, that's a funny example, but that is, right? Like, the ability to do work is, like, can you get stuff done and keep moving, right?
Right, and then not cross. I will say something about CrossFit, but parkour tenets, want to be strong, be useful. That's a pretty common thread in parkour, and that I think the usefulness is interesting, because when we say be strong, be useful, I think a lot of us are imagining that at some point we might have to run after something, or run from something, or run and help someone. But if you get to that someone and you can't
lift them,
then right, which is why
I'm here, bro, and they're like, awesome, did you bring medical supplies? No. Okay, can you carry me to the medical supplies?
Yeah. No,
I'm just here for moral support at this point.
I have seen a ton of videos where people, like, there's a fire or something, and someone uses at least a parkour like technique to climb like a couple stories and get a baby or something like that. And most people are just stuck on the ground.
And most people can carry a baby. Justin was a big baby.
Justin was a thick baby. And
Justin was thick too.
About 9 pounders.
Diabetes babies.
Right, we got that breve babies. So there's that. I think this is just a sticky like idea. I want to talk real quick about how I think the idea of practical training, really, I don't know if it really matters unless you're in an application that's using it. Like if you're in police, police and fire or something like that. And even then, I don't know if it's still, you have so many tools. Even if you're in the military, you're carrying around a ton of weight on you. This idea that parkour, it would definitely benefit you, but, so I have that question. And then I also have the CrossFit scenario of, being, strong across all these modalities, but always sort of seeming to be in the preparation mode. Like, I feel like there's some, not irony, but some hypocrisy in that. It's like, okay, I'm just going to be super useful, right? So method natural, which comes before parkour, definitely had that pretty well rounded out, right? There was ideas of lifting and carrying and just general purpose utility. CrossFit comes along, and I think a lot of people say functional training. I see this on the walls of gyms just driving down the street where it says functional training. And I'm highly aware of how hard it is to think and do things for function. And I'm just wondering how some random gyms just put that on the wall. And I think what they mean is they're maybe going to teach you a back squat or something, so that you're actually lifting a thing and not just doing group fitness classes or something. So I wonder if we can just let go of that and just say, people who are training gymnastics or basketball or sports, they're not claiming to be functional trainers, right?
But they're definitely functional.
But yet these athletes are yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Arguably more functional. Yeah.
So is that just sort of a line, do you feel like?
I just think, we can definitely start being more specific with our marketing as an industry when we say functional training. But I think most of it just comes because we've oscillated as a culture of we wanted specialists. We wanted, people who are really good at their one sport. And then of course, because the elite in a sport are not you and I, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The rule of thumb or the chance is you are not an elite athlete in a sport, right? Just like if we were to roll the dice on any average person. And as a result of that meant the large population of people couldn't be specialists, or at least they thought they couldn't be specialists for whatever reason, because of branding and marketing, and just because when you watch an NBA player with a 42-inch vertical, you're like,
yeah, right.
Nah. Right? So then you're just like, well, I guess my only option is if I can't master any of the trades, I just be the jack of them, right? And then we shifted to this marketing strategy as an industry where we're specialists, let the specialists play on TV. You just need to be the best all around, jack of all trades, right? And so then we started, that's where this functional fitness came out, and that's right at the same time that CrossFit just became
it's true.
skyrocketed in popularity because it appealed to a larger population of people.
So there is some truth to that. I feel like most people just, in the end, want to be able to either train or hang out or do what they want with their friends. Mm-hmm. They want to be included, or as they get older, they want to still be able to keep up with younger people, including their kids.
Yep.
And they want to be able to lift a few things and just enjoy life. They want their quality of life to be higher, right? Yeah. And they want, that's what they mean by functional fitness. They still want to be able, I think people hear it and they're thinking, yeah, I want practical fitness. But what they really just want is to continue to be able to function. Right?
They want to be fit, right? Mm-hmm. The definition of fit and the definition of healthy is functional, right? So it's you don't really need to say, here's your wet water.
Mm-hmm. It's
you implied. Just say, here's your water. It's
right.
implied that the water is wet.
Right.
I feel like it's functional is probably just appealing to people who don't want to go all the way to the other side and be the gym Chad. Because I think
Chad,
when most people look at gyms and even CrossFit, but the bros in the gym or the girl bros too, that they see them as super fit and they have these diet plans and these regimens and they don't want to be like that at all.
Ain't nobody got time.
And so if anything hints at that possibility of them becoming that, they want to stay away from it. So functional fitness does not sound like I'm going to become this yoked Arnold boy, right? So
it's definitely not a lifestyle.
When someone says functional, it says, oh, okay, it's not intense.
It's functional, loosely translates to you have a full-time job
Yes.
and assets.
Yeah, maybe it's like
family.
mental function as well.
Yeah, like you're like a normal person. You just need to be fit.
Yeah.
I think it also implies that you feel like there's a deficit in your functionality. Because you wouldn't
Yes.
go. I would never go after functional fitness.
Yeah,
Because I'm
you're
high functioning.
functional.
Right. Why would I? Like what I'm looking for is function. Yeah. Well, maybe like a bigger jump at height. Maybe I would be giddy about that or something, or just being able to. Actually, what I get excited about is so like in my training, I've been working on my knees, and I didn't feel like my knees were a deficit, but I actually was like I was just taking one for the team because I was like. I have a lot of students who complain about knee stuff. They come in with knee stuff. They come in with chronic knee stuff, or acute knee stuff, or I had been doing b-boy a little bit, and my knees on some of the stuff on the groundwork were getting fatigued. Like I wasn't able to do 45 minutes of groundwork.
On your footwork. Yeah.
On my footwork, no man. Like that down rock at like freaking half an hour in, even me, I was like, and I have the martial arts background, so I already have like the drop stances, and I've had splits in the past and stuff like that. I'm working back towards that. So I was like, I'm gonna learn more about knees because I have so many people around me. And then once I started training it, and I was like, man, like my knees were okay, but now my knees are like they're getting really strong. Like like I was working on Webster's the other day, and I was working on my offside for Webster's, Webster fronts. This last Sunday, and I had done a session of b-boy, so we had done 40 minutes of work or something. I was like, I'm gonna train Webster's on the offside and see if I can clean up my symmetry. And I had a couple landings that were like the nastiest internally rotated pistol squats with a twist at the bottom on like a mat. Just the grossest stuff that if I saw like a student do, I would be like, you need to stop. And find
You're done.
You're done. You need to find a regression.
Yeah.
Like, this is not for you right now. And I looked at the video, I was like, oh my god. And my knees, I didn't have a single repercussion from it. And that was just warm up and some of the conditioning I've been doing. Like, I'm not going to share those videos, but just imagine, like, the wickedest, like, internally rotated pistol front sweep landing disgustingness. It's offside work. You know how it goes. So I went in, and there's just opportunities there, and that's functional. Like if you go in, if you can't squat, that's a functionality you need.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's real function. So what are the hallmarks of functionality? Let's just take a second to call those out, because I feel like if you're someone who is training outside and you're going to a place that's offering functional fitness, what's the functionality? Like, what's the function? I guess that's always been my question. And I think the first one we should talk about is squat.
That's a pretty that's pretty important function. I do feel like a lot of people in the parkour and by extension I hate saying the term, but the movement community, right? Get hung up a little bit too much on the squat, and that they're like, no, you gotta be like have a perfect like rock bottom overhead squat, yeah,
right.
And the reality is that that's just not achievable for everybody, right? Like if you get an 80-year-old client and he comes in and he's like never squatted in his life, he's never going to have that beautiful like Olympic lifter overhead squat. I shouldn't say never. It is highly unlikely that he'll never be able to get in there. And there's another thing is that are you going to waste his time and by extension his money trying to get him there when the effort would be better spending like let's get him a really good squat, really good shapes, and then move on to something else that matters.
Yeah, right? and there's that exchange between happiness of like enjoying movement and just always being stuck on the same. Like, we're working on squat today, really? Yeah, we're going to do a year of squat training. I mean, you kind of need to find what the right amount of volume is for that. So, but I would say squat is not only squat, but sometimes I see people who have the squat, but they couldn't load or they can't take a jump in that squat. So I've watched a ton of like athletes, especially earlier on before just the level of world-class training sort of weeded them out to some degree. But I've watched people, and their joints are so mobile that they are so flexible that they look like every landing is going to be like a hyperextension or is going to injure them. And so that's at that range of like, if you're so flexible that yes, you can get in all these positions, but it's very obvious that you don't have strength, stability in those positions, then I think you're at risk of injury. And that's also just not working towards anything. You just had that, and now you'll eventually end up with some sort of chronic problem in a joint because you can't hammer on them under load without.
Yeah, you're a soft tissue athlete.
Yes, exactly. You're like, I take all my jumps and full squat, and everything lands like that. There's no control. So one of the things I do in tracks with athletes is I have them do like a tuck jump, and then land, but they have to land with touching the ground and then loading the eccentric phase. So loading into the bottom of the jump like a falling leaf, like something that floats down, like an elevator stopping. So the metaphor I do is like, okay, you want like 5-star hotel landings, right? The elevator in the 5-star hotel, and then it goes really fast, and then it slows, and you need, ding, the door opens, and you're like, did we even stop? Have you ever been in an elevator like that where it's so smooth? But then you might have 1-star, 2-star. Like 1-star is it's got the gate, and then it jerks to a stop, and then there's a step out of the elevator to the first floor.
That's the coal mine.
The coal mine elevator, right? You're just like your landings are like, and that was painful. And then you open it and jump out and risk falling backwards and dying down the elevator shaft. And then most people kind of hang around that 2-star, 3-star hotel elevator, which is like, the Best Western to La Quinta. Like you get a jerky stop, and you're like, yep, this is the second floor for sure. And then you get out, and you're like, that was kind of jarring, right? Mm-hmm. The quality's not there. I'm sure some elevator technician out there is like, well, that's just not a good maintained elevator. But
yeah,
I think the metaphor stands true.
I hope there's somebody out there that geeks out about elevators and elevator maintenance.
Yeah, because we need that protection.
Yeah, they're important.
Very important.
Matter. Okay, so we got squat as our functional.
As a function
requisite.
of landing at a minimum, right?
And takeoff too. So
landing and takeoff. You've got what other functional things should you actually be looking for?
Hanging
As
it relates to swinging and pulling.
Right.
Matter, right? So like hanging and being able to pull up in various angles.
Yeah, we even call
going.
that climbing, and as it applies to parkour.
Yeah, actually, I like climbing. I was making a list of like somebody was like, I'm looking for a gym, and they were like interview questions. Do you teach me
to hang? Squat.
Do you teach me to hang?
Yeah.
Right? Or like, can I see your programming? And you don't see any like hanging related stuff in there. Then they're not actually a functional fitness area.
Also, do you run into this if you're a parkour athlete who's looking to augment their training with some more like foundational training? You do have to watch out because a lot of people will want to take you down a very traditional route. Ideally, you'd find someone who is able to translate some strength work directly back into work in parkour. Right? Yeah. This is just going and finding like an Olympic lifting coach or a powerlifting coach is good if you understand that translation. So I think this is what I want to call out. We're doing a lot of the work on our end. Like when people are like, oh, these guys are doing these other programs, so maybe I should just go do these programs. Maybe not, because we're able to translate. So a lot of the people who are training and doing extra programming is not actually... they have no idea what our sport is. Really, in concept they understand, but they don't know how to necessarily train for it. So we're going out and we're able to see the gold and, I see how this translates over. And then, so that's important too. So try to find someone who's closer, has some experience to parkour, who's doing strength training as well.
Yep.
But the risk you run in that too is that they're less competent in what they're training. I've seen a lot of people who are claiming to teach, not a lot, but I just see attempts at people who are trying to teach strength training in relationship to parkour, but the strength training isn't the basics. The fundamentals aren't amazing.
Jump mechanics for parkour are super specialized.
They are
super specialized. So the timing from pretty much any other sport doesn't make sense. I mean, even just looking at the basketball programming, the angle of their jumps are completely different than us. We almost never jump straight up at something. So, and I think that's probably the hardest part, I think. And something like a lache is just no one's going to understand the techniques of a lache and understand what...
Which I think we've talked about. And I'm pretty sure parkour is the only sport that the lache is...
asymmetrical like that.
Is in its... Well, it's just... I can't think right now off the top of my head of another sport that actually uses the lache like mechanics. Right?
No,
I can't even think of a sport that gets close.
The only one I use is archery because it has that similar like release, but it's a completely different.
And there's a bit of
you're kind of holding it, and it's not the power.
It's not
doesn't
power.
come,
It's not a power move. It's definitely strength. Those bows are pretty strong.
So yeah. So yeah, that's why the mechanics of parkour are so unique that I think it's hard for someone who's working in any sport programming to apply it.
Even our jumping, right? Like the way that we jump is, with the exception of like the broad jump on the ground, which is the same mechanics across the board. But yeah, like, I mean, when we jump to something, we're not landing flat-footed or heel to toe, right? Like in anything, we're jumping toe to toe when we do our broad jumps, which is nothing like the long jump, triple jump. They all land into a sand pit, and they're just like they're in these gross like pike shapes, right? To get every inch that they can, because they know that they're gonna land in like a soft sand pit that's not gonna damage them, which parkour athletes don't have the luxury of doing.
Yeah.
So that's
we do have some heel to toe transitions on like step ups and stuff like that.
Yeah. Which I saw basketball uses heel to toe too.
But they don't use it elevated. Like rarely are we heel to toeing, but maybe for like gather stepping on flat.
Yeah, they use gather step for vertical.
Yeah, but to your point, like we may think that parkour is very generalist, and that like these are moves that humans need to have, right? It's kind of a common thing, is that like parkour is just kind of a return to the wild for the biological aspect, the physiological aspect of humans. But the reality is our sport is very, very specialized in the mechanics. It looks very similar, but when you zoom in on a microscopic level, the mechanics are different. So when you're looking for a trainer, they need to be able to, or you need to be able to, make that translation from their specialty and their skills and training to your sport, right? And like you were saying, you can definitely find parkour coaches out there, but what you gain is they'll have really good translation abilities, but they may not be very specialized or educated in that other realm.
Yeah, you for sure need someone who understands both. I mean, like Ryan Ford's been doing the strength mechanics for the purpose of parkour for some time. Renee up in BC has been doing that for some time. We, at least locally, I don't think Outrun Online now has some definitely some fundamentals on there as well. But so there is an emerging class of education in gym that I think we should call out really quick, which I think we fall into, that's different than a gymnastics or martial arts school, or even someone who's new. I've also seen some church parkour programs just pop up, and in the beginning, it was the first 5 to 15% of people who were interested and excited about parkour. So the quality of training was pretty high in some areas, in some niches, but also lacking some of the other benefit that someone with a traditional program would have coming in, right? And now we see that starting to emerge, a class of parkour gym or parkour education that's of a higher standard, that's going to have those backgrounds. So I'm not so gung-ho about people saying, hey, if you want to learn parkour, just find a parkour gym in your area and start going. I think it's analogous to martial arts schools. They're not all equal, and some of them out there potentially could be teaching dangerous techniques or new to it, and just you're failing through their learning. So you want to find somebody with experience. There's enough people out there with experience now that you could at least get your foundations in an online program, looking at Parkour EDU, or looking at some of the Outrun Online stuff that we offer, or any of these like core gyms that have had to put out some online content that are really good over the COVID times, and then use that as a lens to sort of judge the level of quality that you're getting when you're going somewhere. Because I'm worried. I think there are some people who's like, oh, parkour is cool, so let's just spin up a program. We're not really about parkour, but let's try it.
Yeah. Well, and that I think is a failure on that business or that entity of recognizing what specialties parkour actually is, right? It's kind of like a rec gym being like, oh yeah, we'll have like a club basketball game, and
or club martial arts,
and we'll just throw in like a coach, And he's like, oh yeah, like I know the rules of the game. Just because you understand the rules of the game doesn't mean you can make each athlete a better athlete at that game.
It's
right?
true.
And so just because you can recognize what parkour looks like doesn't mean that you can actually apply the teaching and get people those skills, right?
No way.
So,
and it's still a young
super
sport.
important.
It's
Yeah,
still a young sport,
it
so
is.
we're growing etiquette and we're growing education, and you want to find who is at the front of that. But I would
we're
say
not so young a sport though that anybody in your immediate area is a good resource, right?
right.
Like just because some guy is like spinning up some program at a gymnastics facility, you should still vet him, right?
Mhm.
Whereas like
No, that's what I'm saying.
15 years ago, just finding somebody who knew what the term parkour meant
Was a big
meant that you were in the right area. Now the sport has enough wealth of knowledge from various individuals that there is definitely a cast
Mhm. Of experience.
of experience, and you should definitely be vetting people because you don't need to suffer anymore.
Right. You don't need to. There
If
are
you're starting
standards.
parkour, you don't need to suffer anymore. There are good, experienced coaches that are accessible to you,
Mhm.
and you should definitely treat yourself
to get those.
to one of those
Mhm.
people,
Mhm.
right? Don't just suffer at whatever's available to you. There's a lot more, whether that's online or if it's an extra 20-minute drive to
Right.
a different area of town. We talked briefly. I guess we could list out real quick. What are the other functional requisites? So we have
Gotta
squat,
be
we have
some sort of
hang.
groundwork too in there. It's probably the other one missing.
What do you mean by ground?
Like crawling?
I would say, something that gets you up off the ground in case you are falling, or gets you used
Ascension.
to falling to the ground and getting back up. I mean, that's
Changes in elevation.
yeah. If you're thinking functional, yeah, it's probably the only thing missing out of a traditional fitness gym. No one's gonna teach you how to get up or get down.
That's true.
Yeah. So you're gonna get the
Maybe yoga.
yoga. How so?
There are a lot of that's true. Yoga does do a lot of like floor
You just have to move around.
changes
on
on the floor.
You move
So
around the
maybe
floor.
that's maybe.
Yeah, that's back to like Ito's old rant about just like get on the floor. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do like that rant.
Yep. So okay, all right. So I think that the biggest thing too that we're making the observation of is that if you go to some sort of functional place and the first thing they try to get you to do is throw you in a bunch of equipment, you know, this is what makes parkour growingly unique and special is that you're generally encountering stuff and then moving in relationship to that stuff.
Mhm.
And that's up, that's down, that's different surfaces. It's you in other places. And that's why I would argue that it maybe is the most functional training that you can do, because you are always going to encounter different stuff unless you're just not moving. If you're in a chair, and even then there's fun stuff to do, but if you're in a chair and that's all you're in, that's different. But you're always, like, let's say you're a young person and you want to do different sports, you're always going to encounter differences in turf and potentially differences in elevation and that sort of, you know, understanding
Other
of, yeah. What?
I said other people.
Other people,
Against
right?
sports.
You know, if you got to learn to do a directional change and whatnot, that's key part of parkour. So I think that parkour is highly functional in that way. And then just going to these other gyms, like they always just seem over specialized in doing nothing, for lack of a better term. And what I mean by that is that they're very obsessed with the perfect posture of a very specific type of squat, like you were saying earlier, like this form of this particular squat. Oh, we know that it's somebody who gets up and get down, like look at jiu-jitsu. Like you're upright, and then you're at a middle range, and then you're down on the ground. You're not like, oh, but in between that, I hit this perfect form squat. It's like, no way, you're grappling with someone. Like that's another example of an extreme. Or if you're going over rocky terrain or just uneven surfaces, you're not always going to hit like a perfect squat in everything you do. So having that strength through the full range of motion is what's important. I also see people looking for like that perfect depth squat in like back squats and stuff. So you'll watch people even in CrossFit, you'll watch people do squats and they'll be like, okay, down, 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 check. You hit the depth that you need to hit. That counts as a rep, you're back up. Well, you don't ever work into that full range unless you have a coach who's putting you down there, right? You're looking to check off the box of, okay, I lifted the weight, this is how my back squat is. And I just think that's such an arbitrary metric.
There's a little bit of like bro science there where it's like good rep,
Yeah.
no rep.
I'm just
go lower,
go
right?
lower.
Like I think those are important metrics, to just assume that you're doing the actual work necessary in that movement, right? But like, yeah, you don't get too hung up on there.
Exactly, because what is it really? I want to challenge that. You're like, hey, I have a 300 back squat. Okay, cool. Like, show me. And even if you did, like, cool. It's kind of a best of party trick, right? Like, good job. Like, most people are like, I don't even know relative to your body weight that even matters. It's a very specific group of people who would actually care or pay attention to that. And so the other side of that is just, are you actually able to use what is functional everywhere else? Like, just use logic, right? You went to your thing, you did your thing, and then how often are you using it? All right, parkour is great because you're just like, oh, I go outside, and then I was like, oh, I saw this. People are always telling me, oh, I thought I almost rolled my ankle, or I stepped off a curb, or I just knew where something was when I didn't expect to know where it was. Like, my intuition was better around space around me, and then I jumped up on a thing, and I jumped down, and that was awesome. But I just don't see that direct translation from other functional things. Like, the number of things in CrossFit that spill out are a little better. Like, I'll hear people like, oh, I went out and then I picked up my swing set and I didn't break my back. And I was like, okay, cool. I mean, that's that lifting is about the only thing that happens with those guys. Oh, I was watching that. But then there's the detriment of your functional training, which is the CrossFit kip. And I've been around. I think kipping is a skill that you need in very specific situations, but that kip that they do in CrossFit is not. Is the application of kipping is like, 10 different applications. Let's say the CrossFit kip only hits like 1 or 2 of the potential times when you would kip. Mm-hmm. You need to be underneath something, trying to kip basically to get on top of it. From a bar that's hanging, you're trying to get above it.
Not any room for swing.
There's no swinging. Yeah. It's just you go over into kipping and you kip 1,000 times in a workout, and then you haven't swung once, right? I mean, you swing, but it's not the same. Because I just watched that The Floor Is Lava or whatever show. Uh-huh. My daughter and wife asked me to watch it, and I was just like, it was, I would do the courses. Don't get me wrong; they look fun. But they're taking random people and throwing them in. It's like so cringeworthy. It's like, okay, well, it's like a show that's like, let's take people who've never fought before and have them fight amateur boxers. It's like, okay, those amateur boxers are going to annihilate. They're just... You'd still watch that? Yeah. But we know the outcome, right? Mm-hmm. It's not paying any respect to or homage to boxing at that point. It's just watching people who think they have a hope fail.
Get wrecked.
And so I literally could see it. This woman was hanging on what looked like some sort of like kitchen utensil like rack, and trying to swing to something. She had the little like lava liquid underneath her, and she had a target. It was not. I mean, you guys, you can almost touch it with your leg from hanging directly from it. But because the thing was loose, you could see her kip, and she was kipping like a CrossFit kip.
And it's moving. And
yeah, it's moving, and she's not going anywhere. And she's like, I'm gonna like hollow arch, bail, right? There was no understanding. And I see when I try to teach the heel and toe just swinging, right? And the hollow arch form to my adults, it's almost like I have to rehab them sometimes from CrossFit.
Yeah.
It's like, let me know if it should be a questionnaire when they come in. Have you done CrossFit? Okay, here's what I have to fix.
Yeah. That being said, we've shifted a bit to like bashing CrossFit.
I know it's too easy. I won't.
I do think CrossFit has done more for the average person in the realms of fitness.
More good than harm.
Anything else has in
recent times.
30 years, right? Like.
What things? Just let me ask you real quick.
Well, like you have like the Bowflex home machine, right? Like,
okay.
Did that really help people or hurt people, right? You have the rise of like Ito's, philosophy and the movement culture, which I think is definitely
way better than CrossFit.
Is way better than CrossFit. A dude who has a full-time like job and a wife and kid and like assets and like he's a grown adult is gonna look at that and be like, no thanks. Right? Because there's just so much philosophy in it.
I really love it, but I feel like he lost me when he stopped doing cool stuff. That's just what it was for me. It's like, I love all your stuff, but the second you start punching tennis balls...
It's just but I don't know if I would blame Ito for that.
No.
As much as I would blame the the mentality of people looking for something to get really good at, right?
It's just the demographic.
It's like he does juggling once, and then everyone's like, "Here's my 60-day course online for juggling."
Yeah.
And you're like, "Wait, but that's
so
just..."
there's stuff like that, right? That I think the movement culture has, where they're like, they have these weird, like, nonsense things that they think you should be good at. Just as CrossFit has these silly nonsense things like beat the clock on this workout.
I think that parkour
Right,
also has silly nonsense things.
Absolutely.
But the difference is we know it.
Well, yeah, we're aware of it.
We know it's silly and nonsense, and we'll actually be like, this is silly and nonsense.
You can never escape it because the office will always bring us back to that like emotion, that feeling, where we'll never be able to take what we do seriously.
I don't know. Yeah, you think Office was what pushed it over the corner, or for us?
I just think the second that you get too serious about parkour, you're going to be on the street filming your video, and someone's going to come along and say, "Parkour, parkour," and all of a sudden, you're not a serious athlete anymore.
Yes.
It's as if like you're about to get in your NASCAR like vehicle, and somebody's like, "I'm on fire, Ricky Bobby!" Right? Like if that was the case, like every time you're getting into your car to race, somebody says, "Hey, Ricky Bobby," you'd be like, "Oh my God, I get it. The movie's about NASCAR, and I'm a NASCAR driver. Leave me alone." Right? I'm sure. Actually, you know, NASCAR may suffer from that. They may actually be the closest in feeling our pain. Because what other sport? Well, I guess actually maybe you have.
They do have backflips
in water boy. For football.
They do have backflips in NASCAR.
Yeah,
that's true.
That's another parallel. Let's not draw too many parallels in NASCAR.
but you're right. Like there are those like silly things that if you try and take yourself too seriously in your sport,
you shouldn't do that.
So I think I'm not bashing CrossFit. We are bashing aspects of CrossFit. The same as we're bashing aspects.
Don't bash aspects of parkour too.
We're critiquing CrossFit,
so I'm not trying
critiquing all the others.
I'm not trying to tear down people who are moving. You know, if you're out here getting yours and you're moving,
100%.
You get yours, man. I'm not going to judge you for that. I have had CrossFit athletes come in who look the type, like they looked like a CrossFit athlete, you know, and even like male and female athletes who can't cat hang for any amount of time.
Yep.
I mean, that's a thing. So just, like, don't think that... I guess the message we're trying to get apart is that I will say this with parkour gyms, too. Like, don't walk in and assume you're getting the full package without... just dip your toe. Get a little bit of research. Do it like that. Otherwise, you could be going into a situation where someone's just, like, not giving you the bill of goods that you thought you were going to get out of the situation. So that's something you're mindful. Also, we were saying... You know, CrossFit has this and CrossFit doesn't have that in relationship to like Ito stuff. So, but you know, the Boulder movement culture, right? Matt Bernstein, those guys who I love to death. They start out at Sanitas, right? CrossFit Sanitas in Boulder.
Oh, gotcha.
So. Yeah, CrossFit Sanitas in Boulder.
I was thinking the brewing company.
No, Sanitas is just everywhere in Boulder because it's a Sanitas reference.
And it's a good name.
Yeah, it's good, right? It's a good name. So they were open to that, and I think we were able to go down, and when we did an Ito course, we were in Sanitas in Boulder. But the ironic spin to that is I heard, and I don't know if this is a rumor online, so we might be perpetuating fake news right now, but I think the owner of Sanitas is named Eric or whatnot. I think he's buying CrossFit. Like
HQ?
Like straight up, yeah. Buying CrossFit from Greg Glassman.
Wow. I mean, yeah, Greg's time is
definitely up.
Is up. Sorry, Greg. But yeah. Time's up, bro.
Time's up, bro. For sure.
Take your money and run.
Mm-hmm. Or whatever, yeah. That's definitely, I don't know if that's a buying a low or a high at that point. But yeah, so we could see more integration because he's very open-minded to that, and we could see more integration potentially with a broader movement into the opportunities that people would take CrossFit, maybe, or the WOD could continue to be double unders and burpees for the rest of the known time, mankind, right?
And throwing names on things,
right?
Gotta name your workout. If it's not named, it doesn't count.
Right. Easy to remember. That's a genius idea.
It's genius branding.
Mm-hmm.
Genius branding.
It's like those keychains that just have like, carry. Right? The keychains you buy at like truck stops and like when you it's like, oh, I'm gonna do that one because it's got my name on it, right? You know, I wonder how many people started CrossFit because a workout was like, I'm gonna do that, and they see what the workout is. They're like, what? 2 million double unders and like freaking deadlift at 450? Huh? I'll give that a shot.
Yeah, I feel like there's a bit of an element too with fitness that clients need to look out for, like you as you go to search a program, is any old coach can make a workout that you're like, wow, that sucked. That was hard. That hurt. Right?
It's really not hard to make people hurt.
It's
folks.
really not. You just assign more volume.
Yes.
And there's that, right? So you want to find a coach that understands like what is hard enough and what is productive difficulty, right? Like what is like, oh, that was difficult in the right way, in the right volume.
Yeah, coach shouldn't hurt you, and you should get better. It's very simple.
And if those two, if you're being hurt by your coach, mistakes happen. If your coach programs something and then you're like, I tweaked my knee during that or whatever, I guess you're...
Yeah, at that point, what's the reaction of your coach?
Yeah, if your coach is like, okay, cool, we're changing it up, here's the new stuff, then good on him.
Go harder, right?
Yeah, but if it's like, oh yeah, that happens to everybody on week 3 of my dead by deadlifts.
Yeah.
You should probably find a new coach.
Yeah, if you approach a workout and it's dead by deadlifts, genius or evil genius or no, that's a big deal. That'd be hilarious.
So don't just suffer needlessly. Know that your suffering needs to like amount to something at the end of the workout or the end of the cycle, because any old coach can just make you suffer.
Right.
It's the old football. It's the old like high school football coach where he's like,
oh yeah.
Here's another. Okay, I'll segue into this after. The football by Vegito.
Vegito.
The football coach who like you guys are running plays and maybe you biff the play for whatever reason and the coach is like, go run 6 laps. Coach.
Because you made a mistake.
There are 2 things wrong with that. One just applies to like coaching as a whole, and that is don't punish your athletes with what they're doing.
We talked about that a lot early on. We don't punish with movement.
Yeah, it's like a kid who's not doing push-ups, and so you go make him like go do bench press like that. There's a disconnect there, or vice versa.
How do you think he's gonna feel about movement in the future?
He's just like, fine, I don't want to work out then ever, right? And that's not what you want. So as a coach, that's the wrong punishment. Second, running laps around a football field is track, and he's a football athlete. Those 2 don't make sense.
It's this mindset that I'm gonna make. It's this mindset of like grit-based training, and I think that's why a lot of certain athletes like team sports is doing something wrong if once people grow up they stop moving.
Yes.
Right. They're like, I can't or I won't do that. Basketball may be the exception. People tend to do basketball. Forever. Right. As long as they can keep their body working, which is probably why you see the knees program associated with basketball stuff. But yeah,
so it's just like it's
like don't punish with the movement, and also just
and punish if you're gonna punish an athlete, which that sounds bad.
Yeah.
Punish with like an appropriate sort of thing, like leave the gym.
Yeah, or
your movement's done. If you're not like if you're a part of a team and your one player's like not like participating or breaking up the team, the punishment is you don't get to move anymore.
Right.
So be gone. And
then also that, if you have someone, and it shouldn't be viewed as punishment, but sometimes I will catch athletes doing something and the technique is poor, so I put them in a lower I regress them in the technique, and I give them more volume at that regression, and they can't stand that. They feel like that's punishment. But I'm really just like, dude, if you just humble yourself for a couple sessions and throw another 60 reps in 2 weeks at this particular isolated movement, you're going to come back stronger. It's very tough for people sometimes to accept that. So that's an option as well. But I also think we should be mindful of that. This is something that happens in parkour gyms too. I know I visited parkour gyms and had people, who kids that either weren't behaving in class, or maybe they were maybe they did a technique or they made a mistake or they're just punishing for the sake of punishment, and they'll make them just do like QM, which is just crawling. You know, they'll make them crawl just around the building like multiple times, and it's just like it's like this military almost gymnastics.
Martial arts and gymnastics are the two worst ones at that. So I just remember the second that I was like, I'm never gonna be like that was when we were watching a group of, it must have been 5 to 6 year olds, and they had jumping in the pit too long, and the two coaches made them jump on the whale mat for like 2 minutes straight, and the little girls were crying their face off because they couldn't jump anymore, and I was like, oh, that's tough. And the coaches were just standing there like, shouldn't have touched that foam pit cube.
Yeah.
So, I counted down from 10.
These poor little girls are just crying, and I'm like, oh, how sad. You're jumping on a mat and it's so miserable that you have to cry. Like, how do you ruin that for them?
How do you ruin what is really fun movement?
Yep.
Don't ruin it like that.
Yeah,
oh my goodness. You do need some structure, but I feel like when we work, especially with coaches who come from other spots into train, and they have like that gymnastics or sort of like whatever, they just saw it. It's not really their fault. They looked around at the gymnastics school they were like coaching at, and they're like, oh,
yeah,
abuse is part of training.
Yeah, it's we're maturing as an industry. Fitness industry as a whole, but I like the term that you use. Like it's that grit based fitness, right?
Yeah.
Because originally fitness came out of sport, and sport was always about like get in there, grind it out, win it for the team, right? And then their training by extension of that became get in there, grind it out, win it for the team,
right?
And sacrifice your knees.
But I think that's why people always expected this marriage of OCR, obstacle course racing, and parkour, but it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the primary reasons. The cultural motives are different. Because parkour people will go and they'll train on a spot. And yes, there are... sometimes you have grit, okay? Everybody just needs it.
Yeah.
Like, you need to be tough enough. You need to have failed. You need to know what repercussions are. You need to be able to overcome stuff. And sometimes that means you in Chinese, we would say, eat some bitter, right? You need to be able to eat bitter. You eat the bitter, and then you build the tolerance, and that brings character out. Okay, that doesn't mean every lesson needs to be like that. It doesn't mean your 6-year-olds need to be treated like that. And it doesn't mean that every training session is about that. And I think that's what these OCR programs sell a lot. Which, again, they're fun, they're good. They're like, let's do something. I think you've got these people who are sitting on couches with dad bods who, or maybe not, like the high-level athletes are really good in OCR, so I'm not taking anything from them in that way. But I just think this mindset of like, I need to be punished carries into OCR. It's like, you know, moms want the booty boot camp. They just want to go and have 40-minute session where they just get thrashed once a week by whatever the curriculum is. And parents feel like their kids need to be thrown into an MMA class at 6 so that they learn, you know, what an arm bar is and what that feels like. So if some bully comes up on them, you know, you know these parents, they're just like, I need to get my kid on the mat. Right? Your ground game's horrible, Junior. Right? This is really the modern equivalent of the football dads that, you know, are just still exist out there yelling at their kids to take the hit and what, like, I hope parenting is maturing. But it's this mindset. And it comes from the you know, mom and dad, depending, might want the booty boot camp, the CrossFit WOD that just like trashes you. You know, you might want to do the OCR course. And I think this is why parkour isn't as appealing for certain types of people, because the damage is less obvious, because the only damage is you fall, right? And that doesn't appeal to anyone. They're like, oh, I can't wait to try that jump so I can fall.
Yeah.
No one thinks that. But they don't see the work that has to be done at a technical level too. So, I mean, there is a chance for that. And early parkour training, a lot of that was go out and like you did the whole like crawling through Paris, or was that Ryan who did that?
Yeah, we both did it.
Oh, you both did it, right.
Separate trips.
And so what was that like? Because it's not just leave CrossFit, or excuse me, not CrossFit, let's just not just leave parkour, you know, untouched on this. We gotta be humble. We gotta just have some balance here.
Oh, yeah.
It's not whole way done. Yeah, I mean, we could have a whole podcast.
What was the most senseless grit training that you did in parkour training that you think, was there a benefit from it, and when would you ever when would you ever do it again? If someone's listening and they're like, well, most of my parkour has been just jams and pretty cool, there's a harder side to stuff for sure.
Yeah, and there's I wouldn't ever do it again. But there is a camaraderie that happens when you suffer together.
We know what that's like as business partners.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's like that's probably the only good takeaway, because when I went and did those sort of things and trained with a big group of people there, we all like went through these mindless things like, we're gonna crawl.
Like, what was this? What did you do?
Like, stairs, and in QM, and there's like 20 flights of stairs, and you're just like in QM.
Mm-hmm.
It's senseless. It's not really making me a better parkour athlete, but what it did do is make a really like fun bond with the people that I suffered with on those sorts of things,
mm-hmm.
right? So when we finished this stair climb, everybody's sweaty and gross, and half the people are still at the bottom. So you go down and you help them crawl sections by going back and doing more volume and suffering with them, right? That builds a lot of camaraderie, and I think about those people fondly. Do I think about the moment fondly? No. But if I was like, yeah, I remember I was suffering on the stairs, and Travis had finished before me because he has friggin' long arms, and then he came down and started crawling again with me, despite the fact that I knew he had already finished,
mm-hmm.
I would look at you fondly. I'd be like, that was really cool that we were both doing this dumb thing together.
But there's an element there that I think you can't get from functional fitness. Which is humanity. You know what I mean? Like, that's humanity. Like, you're learning humanity, and I don't think that needs to be programmed in weekly, monthly, or depending on who you are. Like, maybe it only needs to be done a few times just for you to have that experience.
I don't even know if it needs to be done ever.
Well, like, you wouldn't give it back, right?
No, but I don't know if it needs to be programmed.
That's a very good point, because I think that we've been talking about programming and what you should be programming and what you shouldn't be programming. This falls into the category of something you shouldn't be programming. I think that the spontaneous sort of arising of this type of like moment can't be forced.
Floor is lava kind of thing, right? Yeah. And it's like, if you guys all feel like you're willing to do the challenge together and to come up with the solution to getting somewhere, and that does involve some grit and some crawling for a quarter of a mile, then that's fun. But like I remember we had to do like seal walk. We had to drag our feet around a climbing gym. Mm-hmm. All it did is destroy my shoes. So that's what I regret. It's like sometimes this, and then the worst thing that parkour does, the thing that I always throw some hater points towards, is parkour has this obsession with doing something until you get it, and there's no other solution other than just keep doing it, and eventually your body's just going to learn from its mistakes magically and just do the flip.
You'll either break or break through.
I think that's the most damaging thing.
We call that huck and hope.
Huck and hope.
Huck and hope.
Huck and hope.
Yeah, that's far too prevalent.
No progression. That's just gonna go hard, get all hyped up, and
we'll see that change, because that's a young man strategy, right?
Or very limited. Like I think it's definitely maturity. You're right. Young people can do it a couple times and get away with it. But man, I'm telling you, I see a lot of people who are just like, I'm gonna do nothing, and then I'm gonna do this OCR challenge, or I'm gonna do nothing. I'm gonna try this parkour class, and then I'm just gonna go hard. Like the probably half of my job training adults feels like I'm throttling adults, which is hard because their little hearts are so like anxious to be young again. And then the first thing I'm telling them is wait, don't try that yet.
It's like
look, I can do it.
The crosswalk
like I know you have the will.
Wait,
right? Crosswalk is telling you don't run out in traffic. I'm telling you, just give it some time, because it takes, again, it's going to take 6 months for soft tissue, 6 months, 6 to 9 months for soft tissue to adapt. You're going to need at least 2 months for your muscles to adapt. It's going to be a year before your skeleton gets starts changing, right? And these have to occur in order to be able to do these things. Just chill out and enjoy the ride. You know what I mean? So that's tough. Colin, you that way. You start out, right? You were in the adult class. Did you feel throttled or no? You felt
I'm pretty humble, I think. So I was
I was
like, I'll do whatever you tell me to do.
It's true. It's true.
That's back to being a good student. Right?
Yeah.
It's like question your coach in your own head.
I was like, I've seen what you guys can do. I'd imagine you know how to get there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's trust in seeing the end result and then being like, oh, okay, yeah. that's awesome. I think that when you go again to sort of wrap up the subject of how does an athlete, parkour athlete coming in distinguish, how much of either they need, I think we hit on something awesome, which is stuff like that, the grit stuff, the humanity stuff, some of these special experiences aren't things that you can program in always. So a gym may not be the best place to look for that. Yeah. The relationships, yes, because then you can take them out and you can have your own challenges. Like, I'm not doing some of the challenges that younger people are doing together because I've done them in some ways, and there are challenges that haven't done yet because I haven't, that those opportunities haven't come up with people, and I'm not looking to program that and force that into my experience of the gym. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's the inside and outside element of that. I don't know what the functional fitness people are saying their objective is. If you go to them and you have an objective and they say, oh, well, you want to be able to do this with your kid and you can't, or you want to be able to train in this way with your sport and you can't, I'm going to get you there and we're going to look at how that's measurable, that's great. But if they just have you for the sense of like not perfecting a 3/4 squat, right? Yeah. With a very specific apparatus in the same shoes in the same space every day, and there's not a clear objective, then I think that's an issue. And when we program so much to this idea of I'm going to work on all these benchmarks on the outside, but I'm not going to explain how that gets drawn back to my training, I think that's a risk too. That's what you gotta look out for.
There's too much doing, like just playing the sport and not training, and then there is too much training and never playing the sport. Mm-hmm. So you gotta find a nice balance there, and you gotta find a coach that will test or gather data as to whether or not you're getting better at your goal. Mm-hmm. Right? So yeah, if you're just in there suffering to suffer, sadomasochism is a thing, I guess. Mm-hmm. You do you, but if you want to get better at a certain thing, you should be doing that thing as well. Mm-hmm. So if you're getting into parkour, new parkour athletes coming into the sport, if you're getting into parkour because you want to be more functional, don't put your life on hold because of whatever parkour training is happening, right? Like you should never be like so beat up and destroyed that you can't play with your kids at the park, because that was the entire goal of getting into parkour, was to play with your kids at the park, right? So, or to play football,
or to do more parkour.
Yeah, or to do more parkour, which is always a great thing.
Yep. So, in closing, start with programming that contributes to goals that you have in parkour. If you don't just go out and start Olympic lifting, but if at some point Olympic lifting seems the logical place to go to spend some time and be happy and work on power, then with a smart coach might put you there. You just might get at that point. But just try to draw the lines. And if you guys are like, hey, this is what I want to be working on, or what I want to get better at, or I can't even think of a goal, just message us. Like, that's easy questions to answer. Yep. Like, we'd be happy to talk to you about that. And if you're like, I'm looking to join in this gym, but I question whether they're serious about parkour, send them over to us. We can do a little betting. I don't mind. I'll bet. I'll bet any parkour gym to a degree, right? That actually might be fun. So, know what you're getting into, have a goal, and then you're going to grow much faster that way.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we will catch you next time.
All right.
Chicka chicka.